Okay. And we are recording. Perfect. Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome this Saturday morning to Aries, the spiritual warrior. And before I get started, of course, I got to go over my little announcements. And I just want to share the Shasta journey in September 19th through the 23rd. I have only 4 spots left on that, which is exciting. And then I also just want to remind you, I have the special offer, the 50-minute deep dive for 77, and that link is in the chat if you guys want access to that. And then I also put that in the email. So, and the prompt questions are in there as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so here we are. We're going to talk about Aries, the spiritual warrior. And before I do that, I want to read a quote that I came across as I was putting information together. And this is a little bit geared more to just astrology as a whole. And as you guys know, because I always say that when we're looking at these signs, what I'm looking at is really the archetypal journey and how it pertains to each of us as we go through our whole life, like the incarnation of the soul. So this quote has to do with the astrology aspect of it. So it's a quote by Isabel Hickey, and she writes, "The horoscope is a blueprint of our character. Character is destiny. There is nothing static in the universe in which we dwell. We can change by changing our attitudes and patterns of behavior. In doing so, we change our destiny. Understanding planetary influences, which are the signs, is what she's referring to. Understanding planetary influences allows you to take life into your own hands and intelligently utilize these planetary influences to help you evolve." And when I came across that, I thought that was powerful because one of the things that I was reminded of just the other day when I was having a conversation with a friend of mine is we were talking about how um, the concept of when we say our soul chose to come down into the time that we have incarnated into and into the family that we have incarnated into. And I want to apply that concept to astrology because we've also come in with the characteristics, the personality that is part of the way in which we navigate the earth plane. And so as far as it being this, many times astrology gets such a bad rap because it wants to it's like it's described as pigeonholing us to a certain way of being, and it's not, but we need to have a reference of how we navigate, and that's what astrology does, is it gives us that reference to understand our personality, to understand the soul, another aspect of our soul's journey. So in saying that, when we look at the like what's called the zodiacal year, which is the year of the zodiac, the 12 months, the very first beginning place of that year is the month that we're in right now, which is Aries, because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the first astrological sign. And how the rhythm of it goes counterclockwise. So the first sign is a masculine sign. So Aries is masculine. The first element is always water. And we know there's 4 elements in astrology. So it goes fire, earth, air, water, and then it continues around the whole cycle of the zodiac um, blueprint. So Aries, we begin the year with Aries. And when we're talking about Aries, the other thing that we're talking about here, like I said, it's a fire sign, it's masculine. And when I'm doing and putting this work together, I look at like what feeling am I getting? What is my intuition telling me about what I'm going to name it, right? Because it's like I I put this information together and it's like, okay, what does this feel like? Well, this feels like, and it's also known as the spiritual warrior. Okay. So I just want to invite you to look at, like, as we go through this information, to look at yourself as the spiritual warrior. And no matter where, if we have a Aries in our chart, or I mean, if we are Aries or not, this pertains to all of us. I always say that. So I'm curious to know, do we have any Aries here today? Is there anybody here that has Aries as their sun sign, or um, that they know of in their chart? No, no, like Aries sun, but I'm sure, and you guys do, you have Aries somewhere in your chart, because we all do. Okay, so it being the first sign of the zodiac, the other thing it is, it's it's the beginning. Okay, it's the beginning point for us. So, as an astrologer, when I'm doing a reading and I look at somebody's chart and I see they have a really strong influence of that first house, which we're referring to as Aries, I know that there was like, I'll ask about their birth, like what happened, when you came into this world, because it usually gives some kind of imprinting that there was, it could be some kind of struggle, some kind of, situation that happened with mother, the family, because the first house is considered to be 0 to 6 years of age. Okay. So, Aries, the birth of new life. And Aries also symbolizes like spring, right? So here we are, we've entered into early spring. And with early spring, it has to do with, because we're talking about birth, it also has to do with the child. So the sign of Aries is very associated with our childlike innocence. And if you think about the child and how a child moves through the world, children are very impulsive, right? They don't necessarily, they act before they think, and then they realize the consequences, because that's how we learn. We learn by many times trying things like, oh, the parent says that's hot. And we're like, really? Let me see how hot that is, or let me test that, right? And so there's very much an innocence to this energy, and that's how we begin to learn. And it also has to do with our will, like our will to be, our will to initiate. It's a very strong archetype, Aries is. And it's also how you move in the world. It's the right use of our will. This is what we're learning in the energy of Aries. We're learning the right use of will. We're learning how to move and take action on the planet. And its higher meaning is the will to do good. So let's talk about the will for a moment. And last time that we did the class, I talked about Pisces, and I talked about how will was masculine energy, right? Because Pisces was the feminine energy, the mother energy, whereas will is the father energy. So this is where we learn to understand and explore our will. And it's symbolized by the ram. And the ram, it's really actually not the whole entire body of the ram of this symbolization. It's just the head. And so what that tells us is that this fire sign, this archetype in our life, rules the head. It rules the mind, the brain, the eyes. And we're going to get more into what that means. Okay. Now, if we put together our will and we put together the mind, and then we add in the fact that we're in a very early stage of our life, that we're more impulsive in how we react. It's what we begin to learn here is that Aries is teaching us about how we use our will through the mind, and how our mind will want to control our will until we finally get an awakening to understand how to work with the mind, how to work with our will. And because it's fire, we're also talking about the element, the quality of like anger, rage. Okay. So Aries being the first sign, if it could speak, it would say, I am. But initially, this is a different type of I amness. This is more of I am from the ego perspective, not necessarily from the soul perspective, because early in life, we haven't awakened that part of ourself, and we're in a much more, I'm going to say there, it's more of a narcissistic experience, to where we're trying to navigate life through how we think and how we react with our impulses. And it isn't until later that we have some form of either a crisis of an awakening of some sort, whether it comes as a crisis or some major aha moment for us, that we realize, wait a minute, I'm being run by this part of my mind that is controlling me, and it's like I'm not feeling congruent. I don't feel in alignment. So this is where we begin to awaken, and what we awaken to is to the promptings of our soul. We awaken to the fact that we are more than just the mind. Okay. And so this is the beginning of the spiritual path where we become a disciple. And I've used that word before in our conversations. And I love that word because it is, discipleship is refers to a way of being of devotion. And with every archetypal sign, there is an unconscious aspect and there is a conscious aspect. So there is a shadow, there is a light, there is an enlightenment, and there is a part where we're still stuck in the egoic mind with these archetypes. And are you beginning to see, can you begin to feel how like the shadow aspect of Aries is will, force, this is how I'm going to go through life. I'm just going to, this can be very much a bully archetype as well, versus I am going to use the right use of my power, of my energy to do good. So there's a big difference here. And the part of the walk, the spiritual walk of this archetype for each one of us is to infuse spiritual awareness into every activity we do, into everything that we do. And one of the things that I will say from time to time is that there is nowhere God is not. And that is where, especially that quote fits in so beautifully here, because that's what this is about. It's to infuse our spiritual awareness into everything that we do, that we bring spirit into all of our actions as we walk the planet. Does that make sense? Tracking me on that? Okay. So let's talk about what this brings up for us as we drop into and become more connected with this energy. Um, Aries is the trailblazer. So this is the pioneer within us. This is the trailblazer. This is the the part of us that says, I want to initiate something new. I want to create something new. Okay. And it has the ability, this is our ability to see and sense new paradigms. That's what this energy brings. And if you relate this to spring, it's like that's what spring is. Like we've planted seeds at one point in our life. A lot of times, it's like the fall, the winter, we're planting the seeds, and here in spring, this is where things begin to bloom. This is where we feel more motivated. This is where we feel more energized, and even like coming out of the darkness of winter into the brighter sunlight. There is more inspiration, there's more aspiration that we carry. And so this is where, like, you know what, I'm going to spring clean, and that's just on a really mundane level, but it's also part of it. But this is like, you know what, I'm going to start something new. I feel motivated to initiate something new in my life. Can you guys relate to that at all, as to, the spring and bringing in new ideas, new concepts, just new feelings in our body? And so if you think about it, just we have the beginning of the year, which is January, and there's a feeling to that. But this, in from the energetics of it, like this even brings a more deep feeling during the spring as we approach, we're in the end of March, approaching April. And it's because this is a fire time for us right now. Okay. And fire is all about inspiration, it's all about passion, it's about initiating something new. And when I say passion, I think that is something that over time, life can dim our passion. It can dim our fire. It dims our light. And when that happens, we actually can become depressed because we're not creating. And Aries being the representation of birth and beginnings, not even just new beginnings, but just beginnings. That's creation. And that's what spring sprouts for us is new creation. And so it's such a beautiful time for us to tap into our own creativity and to tap into the deeper meanings of our will. And if you look at one of the prompt questions that I put at the very last one, I love that one because it asks about like, where do you need to burn like brighter? Or hotter, where does flow need to come in your life? Where do you need to be more courageous? Where do you need to step out more? And that's what this energy is here to help bring. I was having a conversation with a client and we were talking about her her son, and he's 13, going to be 14. And what I've learned through one of my mentors was that around age 13, 14, which is, the end of middle school, going into high school, is when that is like the another phase of where the soul is really wanting to wake up within an individual. And so that natural feeling to rebel against parents and to push against, to become an individuate is becomes more prominent in one's life and in a child's life. And I don't know about any of you, but if you think back about that time in your life, there was this need to like initiate and to become, to be separate from parents. And that's what this energy of Aries does. It's like it's the will to be. So it wants to individuate. It's part of the path. And so what is said is that when children don't at one point push away from the familial, from the tribal, family aspect, that at some point in one's life, if one is to, awaken, like that is a process that is necessary. So going back to the RAM and the whole concept of it ruling the head, it rules the brain, it rules the eyes, everything that has to do with the head. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that. I'm going to tell you guys a story of Greek mythology of Hercules that has to do with this whole mind, because many of us know that one of the things that is part of walking this path is learning how to tame and control the mind in a way that is, for the greater good of ourselves, of course, but the greater good of the whole. And so the story will speak to that. I love the story. So it rules the mind to be a channel of transformation, to be a channel of light, to teach the mind, to tame the mind, to teach and tame the mind, to be a servant to the heart and to the soul. Okay. Let's see, what else do I want to share here with you? Any questions? Actually, let me pause for a moment. Does anybody have any questions or comments right now with what I'm sharing here and how maybe they're seeing that show up for them, or anything that they've noticed about their life, maybe even in this time frame of spring that that can relate? Nope. Everybody good? Okay. Oh, Anne. Yeah.
I wanted, well, I just find this really fascinating with just a lot of different reasons. But my biggest one is how amazing this would be to teach kids this information.
Right.
So don't be surprised if you get an email from me, because as I'm putting up people together, but it's just like this would, I think for them, it would make so much sense because they don't have all the filters. They haven't gone through all those years yet to be able to embrace this. Oh my gosh, I have chills. I'll be in touch.
I love that. And I agree with you. When I first was exposed to this and somebody had given me a reading and said, "Oh, I think that you need to do this." And for me, it was very validating, and it validated a lot of things for me as a child that I experienced and made me really realize that the things that I was feeling, there was nothing wrong with me. It's just how my orientation, how I connected and navigated life, and so it was healing in that sense for me. And then as well, when, I have 2 children, they're 15 years apart. My first go around, I knew nothing of this. My second go around, I had been studying this, and it gave me a blueprint that I could use for her to help tap into some of her strengths, and then where she was gonna feel challenged by both her parents, not just the other parent, but me as well, and how I knew I couldn't control her experience in her life, but what I knew I could do is I could help support it as we were going through sometimes some conflict that I could see was going to happen. I didn't know what it was going to look like or when exactly, but I knew that there was going to be some conflict here. And so how can I support her and myself to work through that with each other? Because this was part of our contract. So that was, I hear you, Anne. I mean, I think it's just such a powerful tool, to help all of us to move through different situations. Okay, so let's see. Let me just yeah, I'm going to go through just a little bit of and I've gone through this, but a little bit of more of the shadow, and so that we can see how like this can operate within us. And like I said, just because we don't have the sun sign in Aries does not mean this doesn't relate to us, because it does, because we're all part of everything, right? And we can see sometimes how when we struggle with, let's say, oh, it's hard for me to meditate, and not that you have to meditate, that's not what I'm saying, but it's hard for me to control these crazy thoughts that are in my mind, and I go down a rabbit hole with something that happened, I just got triggered, and then I can't pull myself back, and or I get so stuck in the monkey mind. Like, this is all part of the whole Aries journey that we all have, to control the mind so that the mind does not control us. And so that segues into this Greek mythology of the story of Hercules. Now, I haven't studied all of the, they're called labors that Hercules was set out through each sign. So there is a labor for each sign. And I don't have all of them. I haven't studied all of them. I have a few of them, and the ones that I have, I'm going to share. And so this is one that I'm going to share. And this is, like I said, it's mythology. And so it has to do with Hercules. And so what happened is that what is said that Hercules, in order for him um, to prove to the gods that he was worthy to serve the greater whole. Okay. And the greater whole is, the greater whole of life, that he was going to have to be put to some certain tests. And so these tests that he went through all symbolize the battles within the self. And we all can relate to these battles, okay? And these battles were the trials that he had to face in order for him to become a vessel of spirit from which his soul can soar. That's what was said. So the challenges faced are the conflicts that we all encounter as we brave ourselves to merge both the soul and the ego so that they can work in harmony. Okay, so there, like I said, there's 12 labors that Hercules takes on, and each one is associated with one of the zodiac signs. And again, regardless if we're born under the sign or not, we will all experience these on some level. So here's the first labor of Hercules. So Hercules is assigned to the task of reining in of the wild horses, and these wild horses have potential to kill him. So he's asked to go do that. You need to go out and rein in these horses and bring them back. So Hercules decides that he is going to have one of his trusted friends to help him. So Hercules is confident, oh, I got this. I'm going to be able to capture these wild horses. So he goes out and he does. He captures the wild horses, him and his friends. But then what he does is he relinquishes the task prematurely and he doesn't bring them back. He leaves the horses with his friends to bring them back. And unable to manage these horses, his friend is then killed and eaten by these horses. So Hercules comes back to discover the death of his friend and he's heartbroken. He's heartbroken. So here is the deeper meaning of this. Okay. These four horses, I didn't tell you it was four, but these four horses that he went out to go bring in, they represent the unenlightened aspects of our mind, the monkey mind, the egoic mind. And Hercules' friend symbolizes how the ego cannot complete a task alone. Hercules represents the soul work, which could not succeed until he brings and bridging in to succeed without bridging the ego and the soul. So let me repeat that because I don't think that was very clear. So the work that he had to do by bringing these horses in was actually the bridging of the ego and the soul so that they can work together. But he abandoned the task early because he's like, oh, he's got it, he can do it. Okay. And so what happened is, of course, the horses killed his friend. And so that symbolizes how our mind can totally take over ourself if we do not learn to tame it. And so therefore, what we are asked to do is to reorient our consciousness so that our mind, so that we can harness our mind on behalf of the soul. And our personality, our egoic mind tends to act rashly. It's very ego driven, right? And there's this whole like, oh, I got it, I can take care of this. And so this whole labor of Hercules is here to teach us that our mind is like the wild horses. We have to learn how to tame it. Okay? And that when we don't, we suffer. That's what will happen. We will suffer. And that when we cannot learn to control our mind that is in a rightful, forthright way, we can create destruction and devastation. And that speaks to humanity, especially right now. And so this whole push for awakening for us in humanity is vital. And in order and by harnessing the mind, we're able to create and transform new ideas that can be brought forth from new places within. And so here is where, when we can do this, we actually shift from the impulsiveness of ourself to the intuitive nature of ourself, from reaction to responding. And we're all human. There's times when we do that, and we'll probably always still do that on some level, right? But the more that we're able to harness the wild horses within our mind, it's like when we're having a thought and we can actually stop ourselves and say, no, don't even go there, just bring it in, bring it back in, come back to center. And then there's times when maybe, I know all of us can relate to this, where we haven't been able to do that, and that monkey mind just spirals down that rabbit hole and we can't bring ourselves back. But over time, when we work with it, we can. And we can pull ourselves from going completely down that rabbit hole. And so this also speaks to the linear mind versus the intuitive mind, right? The emotional self, to where when sometimes, we hear people say, like, why would they do that? Like, what is that person thinking? Why are they staying in that relationship? I hear that a lot. It's like, wait a minute, wait a minute. From what mind are you speaking of here? Because the literal mind, it makes no sense why someone would stay. But if we're dealing with the emotional mind that is wounded, makes complete sense. You know, bring compassion, bring empathy. So there's like two pieces here for Aries. There's the part of the mind, and then there's the part of the will. And how are we engaging in those two aspects of ourself? And what's also so like perfectly aligned here, right, is here's the mind in the sixth chakra, and here's the heart in the fourth chakra, and here's the will in the fifth chakra. And so we know when there's an incongruency with the mind and the heart, that this right here is not going to be speaking in a align with alignment. There's an incongruency there. So the will, and one of the questions that I asked, the will is like, where is your yes in your life? Like, where is your will coming from? Like, where are you driven? What is driving you, I should say? What is calling you forth? So I'm going to pause right there for a moment and just check in with everybody. Does anybody have any thing that they want to share or can relate to, or even begin to answer any of these questions that I put up? Yeah, Brenda.
I I love that story, and when I heard it before and read it, I didn't get all that you just gave us. And so, I mean, where did you get that kind of extract the real meaning of it? I mean, because it's not explained in the story.
No, you know what? I studied with a group of people who use this. It's esoteric astrology, and so I studied with that, and that's where I got the info. I learned it.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so
you're
much.
welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. I feel like it's a powerful story, and because I love the metaphor of the wild horses, to tame the horses in our mind, the fire,
Yeah.
burn.
And we can all see that and relate to it. And I just love all those the mythology, but I didn't even get all the meaning, even though I loved it anyway. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, Anybody else have any comment or question, or want to answer one of the questions, like, um, where is the yes in my life? Like, where's my will feel like it's pulling me? What healing experiences have I had, that I have chose a direction that either pleased people or didn't? Because this is all part of the Aries. Aries says I am, and there is, like I said earlier, there is that they can be that very self-centered I amness, but then there is the I am that is not, that says I am and I must, and then I do, right? And regardless of what the people around me think and feel, it's what I know I must do. So that's really powerful. That's that fire, that Aries, that spiritual warrior within you. And I use that as my for a long time, like spiritual warrior. I even have a bumper sticker that I had my boyfriend make, a spiritual warrior, because that's how I felt. It's like, yes, this is just what I must do. This is where I feel called. Very compelling for me. And our enemy is the self, right? How do we brave the enemy, and when the enemy is within? This is all part of this very fiery um, will to do good, will to be energy. So where in your life have you pioneered decisions that opened options for you that you didn't realize would, or like I said, going against what other people think, or, what aspects of yourself need more fire, courage, a deeper and fiery yes to life? Yeah, Brenda, thank you. Oops, you muted yourself again. There we go.
I remember, so very many years ago, my father thought I was crazy when I decided I was going to go into advertising. And he says, why can't you just be contented to be a receptionist? And that you just get me. And you know what? I mean, then that part of me just had to show him. And so I went into advertising and I really succeeded and did very, very well. But I didn't even know that that step was going to help me when I decided to be an artist full time, because then I had the experience of promotions and I knew how to promote myself. And most artists don't like that. That's the hardest part. They don't want to do that, the promotions. They just want to draw and paint. And I'll tell you, that gave me an edge over other artists, because there's a lot of artists that are a lot better than I am, but they didn't know how to promote themselves. So, I mean, I just think way back, because I mean, my father never gave me credit for anything and just wanted me to be little, play small. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brenda.
Mhm.
I can relate to something similar to that as well. And even as a young girl, just pushing against, because my will, it was, like initially in life, I I didn't really know the consequences of what my actions would be, but I knew I didn't want to be controlled in the way I was feeling controlled. And so I took action in that very naive way. And there were some major consequences for me, but it it put me in a direction to be able to walk to the beat of my own drum, right? Because it was like part of my, like, that pioneer archetype that I didn't even realize I had within me, breaking through racial stereotype in my family. And I didn't even realize that's what I did until years later. What I did do was exactly that. So it's just that energy, that feeling inside of us that says, this is what I this is where I need to move. This is what I need to where I need to go. Yeah. Anybody else want to comment or share anything about? Yeah, Anne, I think.
There definitely been times, and I thought there were two things that struck me very strongly. Number one, I'm dealing with kids right now. I have a lot of Aries, and now I know why I get such pushback. And literally that I'm not talking, like, oh God. And when you're talking about, if you don't do it in that early time, you will do it later, and push back. And I can see that. But what stands out right now is you've used the word pioneering, and there was another word. What did you say in the beginning?
Trailblazer. I said trailblazer.
Trailblazer. And I am definitely a trailblazer right now. And I feel I'm pushing up against all kinds of education things that, I'm questioning, I'm pushing, and I'm getting ready. I'm being directed in a direction I never saw myself going with education, and yet it's coming to me, but it's really pulling out that will and standing up that I've been so criticized for most of my life, until finally I've kind of like, I don't really care what you think. This is what I know I'm here to do. So I've been just kind of chuckling and taking all these notes going, wow, this is very timely. And um, it's it is interesting. It's fascinating to me. And particularly when you're talking about Aries being the beginning, my whole body just kind of went, well, that makes sense. So anyway, thank you
Oh,
for
thank
what
you.
you're bringing forth.
Yeah, thank you. You know what just prompted, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. And to add this other piece in. So remember when we talked about Aquarius, because Aquarius was about like, I got to do it differently. We cannot do it the same way. So
Mhm.
so the combination of that and with the Aries, the fire of Aries is saying, I have the will to do it, you know, and here is this masculine energy, that's like, that's what masculine energy is. That's an aspect of it, the will to create, to bring it out, because if we hold it in just the nature of feminine, nothing can be come into, like, how do we get it out, right? How do we create structure? Because this is the structure, is that masculine energy. So go ahead.
That's really that for me, that is a very powerful statement that you just made, because I've had a hard time balancing that masculine and feminine, but it's been my masculine will that's allowed me to move through so many things and bring things forth, that if I had stayed completely in that feminine, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't have had that strength and courage and fire, using these words. So I really appreciate that. And what's so interesting is it's becoming a collaboration of women who we all have. We're highly intelligent, very motivated, very just so skilled. And I think people are just showing up like, I love this. But we also have the feminine side. So thank you. That's a big piece for me.
Good, good. Thank you. Yeah, for sharing that. Yes. Anybody else want to share something or have
I
any
really
questions?
appreciated that discussion you and Ann just had. I have so many, so many. I just was writing them down for myself in career and career changes and my whole. I also was in education, is about pushing in bilingual and rights for English learners and language minority children and um, a lot of times pushing back against employers that didn't get it. And also in my home life, and lots of that masculine energy, definitely. So, and I feel like right now I'm waiting to hear my next step. So I'm just resting in resting mode.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, yeah.
I, I think also that so many of us, when we've been single a long time, we really do use our masculine energy. I mean, we have to that to get along in the world. You can't just be soft and feminine. I mean, I see I'm using all the time a whole lot of my masculine energy.
You know, it has been what's been fascinating in doing astrology charts and stuff, and looking at like the different generational pieces, you know, generations. When I talk to women who are I'm going to say women who are born like in the 50s, 40s, you know, earlier, fire was, it's like, especially if they were a fire sign, like there's so many um situations where I see where that fire has been emasculated, where the masculine has been emasculated because father had the fire, right, in the family, and the feminine, the woman could not. And I don't think it was conscious at all, but then it was also that with that fire energy, the masculine didn't know what to do with the fire in the feminine. And so let me put the fire, let me dim the fire. Like what your father said, Brenda. Oh, no, don't do, like, you need to be a secretary, right? I don't know what to do with that, with this, because you're fire, you're Leo, right? Whoa, this is kind of different energy here. I don't know what to do with it. And in general, women, period. So that's just a thing that I see when I look at a chart. I look at what generation, the 50s, 60s, 70s, all of that, and that gives me even more information of what the dynamics were with masculine and feminine energy, which has been fascinating. Yeah. Anyone else want to share something that's coming up for them, or whatever feels, wherever you feel called to to share? I know you guys are thinking, I know things are wrestling around in the head. Yeah, please unmute, share. It's, when we do share. Yeah, Paul, thank you.
All right, here we go. I had about a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if it's that long ago, but it was I had all these assignments in my seminary class. They all seemed to be due at the same time. And I was at this place where I had to go into my shadow and find out what's keeping me from, why am I stuck? Why can't I seem to move forward? And that moving forward question kept coming up and being stuck. And I said, I know I'm not stuck. I am capable. And then there was a thing about I stopped at this little shop where they had to have crystals and readings and smudge and things like that. I like to stop and chat with people. So I stopped in there and they had these oracle cards. And I ran my hand across one, pulled one up, and it was noble. I went, okay, what's the shadow part of noble? And it was, I mean, noble was like, a good thing, but then there was a shadow part about that part within. Am I kind to others? Am I kind to myself? And I was looking at that and go, I'm not giving myself a break. I can be kind to myself. I can let go of this. I'm moving forward. I'm just going to do the best I can and stop with this perfectionism because doggone it, it's just going to be perfect no matter what happens. So I did this book. I had 4 books to read. I didn't finish them. I said, you know what? I'm going to write that I didn't finish this book. I'll write my assessment of what I did read. So I'm writing these books, writing about these books. I got a meditation for SLC. I've got a talk was just dumped on me for that Sunday, and a talk for the following Tuesday. A wedding ceremony. I'm writing all this stuff up. Like, okay, no problem. Kind of maddening. And Karen was there to see me kind of struggle through some of the changes and things that were asked of me. And yeah, a little bit, saw some of that, just a little bit, but enough to know that I had more shadow stuff coming up. Anxiety right before giving the meditation on Sunday at SLC. And I just slipped right into it. And really what happened was somehow I had written it for myself. It was about breathing, slowing down, being that candle in the midst of the storm that just stays lit. It's like, wow, all that was written, but I think it was written for me. So the shadow stuff that comes up, it's hard to get to that sometimes, and sometimes it's turning over a card that just speaks, or being intuitive and listening to that spirit inside that says, you're fine just the way you are. Anyway, that's what I have.
I love it. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. You know what came up when you were saying that about how the overwhelmment, right, of all this stuff happening. I can relate to that in my own way. And one of the things that I'll do when I go, because what happens is I'll go into like a survival energy. I'll go into flight, fight, how am I going to get all this done? And then I can have these moments where I can interrupt it and remind myself, and we can put whatever word we want in this, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm doing God's work. Okay. So it will all be done or not, and it doesn't, it's okay, Teresa. Like, you're safe. You're doing what you've come here to do. And that, when I realized that, I think probably just a couple years ago, I finally realized that was such a game changer for me. And I was able to give myself grace and just get what I could get done. And it was all going to be what it was going to be. So thank you for that reminder again, Paul, of that. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Tammy.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Paul. And I will say, I think just to piggyback on what he's saying, a big shadow piece that's coming up is really the self-love piece. I don't think a lot of us love and appreciate ourselves enough. We don't give ourselves pats on the back. We don't say we're doing a good job. It's always this perfectionism line, and we're not good enough, and we're not doing this enough, or whatever. We can all fill in the blank with that. And it's something really for the last year. I mean, because it's almost my birthday. And around this time last year, I was like, I am going to do self-love and I'm going to love myself. And that's like going to be my, and I'm like, and here I am, full circle. And I'm like, I did not do very well on that this year. I'm like, but we're going to do it again. And so I think that's just something that's really coming up, that if we could all really look at that and really choose to see ourselves in the light that we are, in the pure love that we are, it really does make us better people. We love more, we work harder. I don't know, we're so much more fulfilled, but we really need to fill our cup first, and we don't do that. And we just talk horribly to ourselves and we don't encourage ourselves. So I would just encourage everyone to just love yourself more.
Teresa, you're muted.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Tammy. That's what I said. Thank you, Tammy. And that was a really good reminder, and a reminder like to bring grace in when we need to bring grace. Because sometimes it's hard to say forgive. And for me personally, if I start with grace by giving myself grace, then there's like this natural unfolding of that. It's like energetically, there's just this forgiveness, So thanks for the reminder. Yeah. Okay, we're coming to the end, but I just want to check in again. If anybody has anything that they want to share or add, definitely would love to hear that. Love to hear from all of you. Um, Anybody else want to share anything that's coming up about this? Yeah, Karen, thank you.
I was not relating to much of this. I mean, I could relate to it with people that I know that have Aries in their chart. I don't really have Aries in my chart. But then I thought of something when Brenda was talking about her issues with her dad. And that was always the thing that would get me going, that rebellious, because yeah, I grew up in the 60s and it was, you're going to get married and you're going to have kids. And that was never my dream. Still not my dream. But what it did is to get me to figure out, okay, how am I going to be self-sufficient then? How am I going to do it as a woman at that time when you couldn't even have a credit card or a bank account without a husband signing for you or something? And so all those things just fired me up. I thought, how unfair, and then having my dad who wanted to protect me, and that's where he was coming from. It took me a while to get to that point of, it's just his way of showing love and the generation he was brought up in. But I was very angry with him for a long time over it. And in retrospect, I'm so glad that he did that, because I can be really good at being passive and letting life happen to me. And he lit that fire in me that said, no, I've got more to do in this life and I need to get off my ass and do it. And it was very difficult actually after he was gone, because that fire kind of went out of me. And I've been trying to find it ever since. And it's kind of been, when it does show up, it's kind of misguided and resentful and whatever. So I've got to kind of, like you were saying, get your mind and your spirit, find that bridge to get things back working together again, get the monkey mind out of there. Because yeah, I've got quite the monkey mind at times. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. That was great. I love that share. So you know what came up when you were saying that? Because I heard you say, yeah, you don't have Aries, but we do have Aries in our chart. And I'm going to show you something that I'm going to screen share for just a second here, because this is what I'm talking about. And I'm going to use my chart because it's astrology charts I think are private. So I'm going to pull my chart, but let's see, let me hit share my screen, and then let's see, where am I? Make sure I get, that's me, and hit. Okay, can you guys see that chart? Yeah, okay. So I don't have any planets in Aries, okay? And I don't have really hardly any fire in my chart, period. But I'm going to show you the glyph. The sign of Aries is right down here at the bottom. See my cursor? Okay, because all of the astrological signs are all around the whole entire chart. So everybody has Aries somewhere. So my Aries is in the fifth house. And the fifth house, even though there's no planets there, doesn't matter. My theme of the fifth house is Aries. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to explain more. Okay, so what does that mean for Teresa? It means that in the fifth house of creativity, I have fire. And so here I am, a former hairdresser. And when I needed to have a different perspective on life, I would change the color of my hair. I would cut my hair. I would do something. I'd have these creative impulses that would get my fire going. Okay. And that's how my Aries shows up in my life, is through my creativity. That gets me motivated. But it's like, okay, I got to do something different. And we have a group, women's group, we get together and we were just talking about this. And I was talking about how I will rearrange my house because I needed something different. I want to see things differently. And it helps me. It's fiery for me because otherwise sometimes it's hard for me to get motivated. So I've got to change something to make it different for me. And so for some people who have a lot of fire in their chart or are in Aries, just period, that accessing that can come a little bit easier than like for someone like me, where I have to like initiate the fire because none of my planets have fire. I have no fire planets. And so, like Karen, what you were talking about, like, yeah, I got to get that fire. It's like, okay. So, like, sometimes the fire in our chart can kind of be like bogged down by too much water, right? Or like, because water puts out fire. And so that's why, like in astrology, that helps us to see that, like, where's my fire getting like put out? Like, what's dimming my fire? Does that make sense?
So
Okay.
mine is in my chart like yours, but not before 5. It's just before 2 on the outside.
It's before 2. So I'd have to really look at that. So it must be in the first house, in the house of identity, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to really look at it so I don't speak out of turn. Okay. But yeah, that's exactly what you would do, Paula. You'd look and see which house it is in. It's always on one of those lines, typically.
So it's on the line between 1 and 2.
Okay. I have to look at the degrees, like how many degrees it's at, to give you an exact on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's part of all the precision of the
Yeah.
of the orbs in astrology. But you get what I'm saying now, right? Like we all have that in our chart.
Yes.
Yes. So just Paula, I'll just say this because it's in between the 1 and the 2, and I don't know which one exactly. It could be a little bit of both. The first house is the house of identity. It's the house of self. So like fire in the first house, I'm seeking, I'm looking, who am I? Who am I? There that, okay? And the second house is I'm the fire, the initiation has to do with the material world, in resources, in things, in like maybe someone who oh God, let's see what would it look like in the second house in fire when it comes to your material things. Inspired by beauty, inspired by, oh, look at this beautiful vase that I just purchased. It could be things like that. It could be someone like fiery, it's a money house, you know using money in a right use for some type of a philanthropy or something like that. I have to look at it to really get a good description.
that-
But yeah.
Yeah.
hmm Annette, were you going to say something before we close? I don't know. I thought you went off there, off mute. Nope, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm not sure I should, but I know I have fire in my chart.
Yeah, you do.
I have water too.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. But I feel there's a tug of war. I feel like I have a lot of masculine energy. And so I'm not sure what the tug of war is about. Is it between the water and the fire, so to speak? And my monkey mind goes crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it could be, Annette, I'd have to look at your chart. And I know a little bit of what your chart looks like, but yeah, very much. Yeah. And that's the thing. When you see all those lines in somebody's chart or in your chart, those are the conversations, and you see those opposing lines, those red opposing lines, those are the conflicts, right? And that's all part of the contract, all part of the journey. So
I feel like I'm going to put it in these words that there's a strong conflict between my ego and my spiritual self. And my ego is scared half to death. Yeah.
I'm going to say that's for all of us, but for us, very
Okay,
all
I'm
of us,
aware of
right? But I hear you, Annette. I hear you. Yeah, yeah. And then our stories contribute to all of that, right?
Oh, I got terrible monkey mind. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Annette. Thank you. Okay. Well, it's been fun talking about Aries. So yeah, if you guys want to do a deeper dive, I put the link in there. Please, check that out. And next month, Aries. So we're going to do Taurus, and I do have the story for Hercules and Taurus, and that'll be fun. It's an earth sign. So we're talking about earth energy, fire, earth. And yeah, are you a Taurus, Tammy? Okay, right on. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't check the date on the calendar for that. I apologize. But I'll get that out very soon. It will probably be something like around the third week of the month. I try to do about the third week because that's when the whole time changes for the astrological sign that we're in. I like to do these while we're in the energy of Aries right now. So yeah, probably like the third weekend of April is probably what I'll do. Okay. Same time, same place. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you. Bye.
Welcome.